down the house, then you put up the rent. You pocket the cash, and you crush all dissent. You pour all the water out on the floor. You suck at the rich, and you prey on the poor.
Welcome to the first episode of the Red Diaper Pail. This is a podcast where the two of us will discuss technology, art, culture, politics, media, and parenting with a left perspective. I'm going to go by Jean-Paul, and what are you going to go by?
Simone.
Very good.
I'll see you.
They wouldn't say that's why, though. All right. Okay, Simone, do you want to tell our one listener, who I guess will be your mother, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I am a mom of 5.
5 children.
And I work in nonprofit technology. My kids are 8, 6, 4, and we have newborn twins.
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 It would have to be twins, wouldn't it?
Spontaneous twins.
All right. I am a social worker. And a political organizer. And I also have 5 children. I think they're the same children.
They are the same children.
Yeah. So I have not noticed many podcasts where the people have kids. I wonder if it's because people are too busy when they have children to do podcasts.
Well, we're doing this on our leave.
On our leave. So this will probably be the last episode then.
Since you go back to work in 2 weeks, yeah.
All right.
They're in bed.
Yes, everyone's sleeping. Thanks, melatonin. No one's screaming, crying while we ignore them to do this. All right. So this is the format of the podcast. We're going to, every time we record, each of us are going to bring one artifact with us to share with the other person. That can be a reel, a article, a news clip, something that we want to share with the other one and have a discussion about, and we'll take turns, introducing our artifact and talking about it. But before we do that, it is a horrible week in the news. We're about, been only 1 week since Charlie Kirk got domed by a person who, we don't know anything about this person except for what the FBI has leaked. So this is sort of a time capsule to a time when we might know more about their motives. We don't know anything about their motives at this point. But do you want to just go through some of your horrible headlines?
Sure. I have a bunch of horrible headlines. The Department of Justice removed a study from its website showing that domestic terrorists are most often right-wing this past week.
Oh, good.
1 or 2 black men were found lynched on a college campus. I saw about Trey Reed, but I heard there was a second one that happened somewhere.
I haven't heard about the second one, but...
Well, anyways, they're going to investigate Trey Reed's hanging death, and I read that Colin Kaepernick is paying for the autopsy.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, imagine being a black person and watching another white killer kill a white guy, and then people are mad at you.
Yeah. Well,
his last words were gang violence.
250 U.S. lawmakers traveled to Israel this week to attend the 50 States One Israel conference.
So 50 states all owned by one Israel? Is that they're not even...
It was an all-expense-paid trip financed by the Israeli government.
To do what?
To host the U.S. lawmakers and urge them to pass anti-BDS laws in their states.
Oh, I see. So 50 states, one Israel. So there's I think from Andor quote, that at some point they stopped even trying to lie badly to us, and that's the final insult. So I guess this is the final insult.
Yeah. It's a 50-state solution. The Department of Education partnered with... Oh, this one. Yeah, so the Department of Education is released like 37 groups that they're going to be working with to rework civics education in the United States. That's like $137 million worth of funding, including Turning Point USA, the Heritage Foundation, PragerU, and Moms for Liberty.
Jesus Christ. So we promised to end the war in Ukraine. Nothing. We promised to stop the bombing in Gaza. Nothing. We promised to do something about inflation. It's now still at 3% year over year. Everything we promised we would do, we can't do because we're too lazy, stupid, venal, and inept. The people he surrounded with himself are more ideologically committed, but have less experience and less ability than any of these things. So the only thing they really have left is a culture war. I feel like with Netanyahu, the war can't end, or he's going to be in big trouble. For Trump, the Epstein stuff is breathing down his neck, and the only thing he has now is the culture war. This is just, they don't even care if this works. They just want to have the headline at this point, to have people talk about anything and make a big splash so that they can win the culture war. This is just a bunch of like the biggest losers you've ever heard of.
I think that
giving money to each other
wasn't a lot of Project 2025 though. This kind of stuff. I think I read something about how that it's been 8 months and they've done like 50% of the things promised in there.
Okay, so they do have an agenda. It's just none of the things they actually ran on. I mean, aren't there? I guess this is what the nice thing about having a political movement that's also a cult of personality. But wouldn't you expect someone to be, at some point, wouldn't you be worried that your followers would be mad that inflation is just as bad as it ever was?
I think a lot of them are mad. That
there's nothing they can do about it.
What are they going to do about it?
They can't admit they were wrong. They're too far. They're too deep.
Yep.
They're in too deep. Okay. Well, that was.
I have more.
Okay. Yeah, more. Okay.
Anyone who State Department says that it is in the process of revoking the visas of anyone who has celebrated Charlie Kirk's death.
Okay.
An immigration judge ordered Mahmoud Khalil deported to either Syria or Algeria.
What does he have any relationship to Syria or Algeria?
I don't think so. Not that I know of.
It's just, this is like the third party.
This is where they pick terrible places to send people, and then he could. I don't know where he would have citizenship, but that is where the judge wanted to send him.
The judge wanted to send him there. Okay.
An immigration judge.
Oh, I see. Okay. Immigration judges are not part of the judiciary.
They aren't?
No, they're part of the executive branch. They're not. They're not actually judges.
The Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against a Rhode Island school district alleging racism against white teachers. So there's a good one.
What? Is there any more to this one?
The Department of Justice has filed a lawsuit against the Providence Public School District alleging racism against white teachers. The lawsuit as regards to a program called the Educators of Color Loan Forgiveness Program. So this is the anti-DEI stuff, and they're trying to come after actual districts for having programs that they believe are.
I see. So this is loan forgiveness, but you're only eligible if you're a person of color.
Mm-hmm. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has signed a bill into law that will allow people to sue anyone suspected of manufacturing, distributing, or mailing abortion pills to or from the state.
How are they gonna prosecute people out of the state?
I don't know.
Oh, I guess it's just like with the rest of it, is you can't step foot in Texas again. They can grab you. And that's horrifying.
Let me see if I have any other. I mean, I have more, but let's see if there's any good ones. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel's off the air, but that's not bad. Everyone's talking about that too much.
Yeah, well, I hate Jimmy Kimmel. I have a sense of man show. I found it despicable and
he's grown up since the Man show.
I mean, sure, but the interesting thing about this is that the FCC is the one that pushed him off the air, and none of the free speech absolutists have any problem with this whatsoever. Unlike, you have 21-year-olds who refuse to buy your book or see your movie. That's canceling, but apparently the FCC does it. It's okay.
Yeah. The Senate unanimously passed a resolution to create National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk
on George Floyd's
birthday.
So that's this is again, they're just dabbing on us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about
this is the culture? Just we'll have the culture war, please.
The state superintendent in Oklahoma, who's a lunatic, has also forced schools to hold a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk, which I guess that they're also doing to the NFL. So,
are you going to be deported if you are loud as hell during the minute?
The scary one I just heard about trans things though is that they're like readying themselves for labeling trans people extremists, nihilistic extremists, and therefore dangerous enemies.
Yeah, they really want. So I heard.
That's terrifying.
I just read something that said that the Trump administration had asked people to hold off on attacking trans people until we got closer to the 2026 midterms because they want to make trans the main issue in the midterm.
Great. Well, some good news on that. California legislature passed a bill to strengthen landmark legal protections for the state transgender community. And California has that West Coast like public health commission, a bunch of states that are making their own vaccine schedules and mandates for their West Coast states. And now Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island have one. So we're going to have vaccine schedules and recommendations in our like regional areas.
All right. So
it's like a pre-Civil War.
Right. Well, that's what I'm going to say. So serious question. What is the chances that the resolution to this is like some sort of national separation?
I think that
I mean, California's economy is, if it was its own country, it'd be the 7th largest in the world. So it can absolutely be its own country.
Well, and especially if you take the half part of most of the Northeast with it, you'd have most of the research and academics.
Well, yeah, I mean,
you'd have all the biomedical. You'd have Silicon Valley.
Almost all of the red states are beneficiaries of and not contributors to the federal government. So you can't really have a country that's just red states, and it makes you think that they wouldn't let them go, or
they just lose very easily.
Well,
they wouldn't have an economy to fund a military.
The problem is that the military is not controlled by blue voters or city dwellers. It's controlled by wealthy people who probably are very invested in not breaking up the United States, even if they're even people who don't prefer Trump would much prefer that than like the Gavin Newsom Imperium in California and whatever they do in Northeast.
New Mexico will become the first state in the country to offer universal childcare, a universal childcare system, which will provide no-cost childcare to all families in the state.
I'm actually surprised to not see more like right-wing support for stuff like that, because I do think that they really do want to see something improve with the birth rate, and you'd think that they would be willing to make an investment in that.
And diapers and menstrual hygiene products will no longer be taxed in Missouri.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with that is it helps brown and black people as well as white people, but
yes, that is the problem. That's the problem that Charlie Kirk would identify.
That is. But only using his words, though, not with any violence.
This news was compiled into an Instagram post done by the account So Informed.
So Informed, thank you. Maybe we'll make a habit of reading this to depress ourselves before we do our effects.
I mean, this was the depressing news that you might have missed because of the other depressing news that was mostly in the headlines.
Good stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, with that, do you want to do your artifact first?
Sure.
I think yours has to do with the big news of the year, I guess, which will be Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Yeah. So my artifact, which I guess we'll link in the show notes, is a Instagram reel, long form video on Instagram by Tad Stoermer, who is a public historian. I guess he has a book coming out. So let me read the the caption, and then maybe we can talk about that, and then I'll play excerpt. So when establishment Democrats claimed common ground with Charlie Kirk this week, it raised a question that I've been researching about a problem in American political culture historically and right now. Do the center left and the far right share something deeper than we realize? I call it liberal nationalism, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Liberal nationalism combines two things: insisting change can only happen through state-sanctioned channels, and wrapping that insistence in mythology about about American exceptionalism. The system isn't just the only legitimate path; it's sacred because America is exceptional, chosen, and special. Ezra Klein said he and Kirk shared a larger project. That project, the American experiment. This nationalist mythology says America, not democracy, not justice, but America is what matters. Here's the strange part. Kirk's nationalism would destroy Klein's. Kirk wanted to dismantle multiracial democracy, restrict voting, return to what he called the founders' true vision, white Christian rule. That would end Klein's pluralistic procedural democracy. Yet Klein's nationalism enables Kirk's by treating it as legitimate discourse within the sacred American experiment. By claiming that they share a project, Klein validates Kirk's anti-democratic work as just another voice in the great American debate. The white Christian nationalist coalition understand this, and they bet that liberal nationalists will always choose protecting the American myth over protecting actual people. They believe that as long as they wrap their extremism in the founders, the Constitution, the American experiment, liberal nationalists like Klein and Gavin Newsom will find common ground with them. So that's his caption for what he says. And what I found interesting about what he was saying is he was putting words and description to this phenomenon that lots of people in my orbit were responding to, which is like, why are folks like Ezra Klein and Gavin Newsom and other mainstream quote unquote liberals participating in the whitewashing of Kirk? And why do they end up saying, what is driving them to be making the arguments they make? And just generally the description of why do liberals do what they do is fascinating to me because I'm surrounded by them at work. And so it was refreshing to hear an explanation that identified that what liberals and what liberal nationalists are ultimately defending and protecting is a project, is the nation state, is something that has very little to do what is good for people, even though they would like to believe that there's progressive ideals wrapped up in some of what they believe. And that they are also naively doing it in a way that basically advances their enemies like Kirk, whereas the other side, the right, knows full well that it's not an even battle here. You have liberal nationalists who will insist on allowing these folks to be on the playing field with them and insisting that that's part of this project. And then you have the folks on the right and the fascists who will just take full advantage of that and have no interest in participating in this project in that way. So I thought his description was interesting and doesn't occur on my feed very often. I do think he's probably a Marxist historian, but he's hiding it. But that was my take.
I mean, if he's a Marxist, he's avoiding talking about capitalism. He's really focused on the political and avoiding like any economic discussion. I mean, I don't disagree. I think at first I think that for a while what you would call the right, like the George W. Bush right and the Democrats were like committed to liberal nationalism as a joint project, and had different ways of seeing that, but they're both committed. I think that's what freaks people out about Trump is that he is not committed and his people are not committed to liberal nationalism. They believe in a nationalism of different kind is viable. I also think that increasingly like the powers behind the Democratic Party are going to come to the same conclusion, but they're not sort of ready to make that stand yet. But I think so you sort of have to ask like, what is liberal nationalism and what is the point of it? I think there's a good starting place to talk about this. And I think the liberal argument is not, I think people perceive it as they believe in these values and those values supersede everything else, like freedom of speech, freedom of the press. These are like how you govern a society justly, and regardless of whether the outcome is just, like the procedures and method are just. And so the outcomes are sort of justified by the means of getting there. But really what they needed to do is they needed to find a way to get a mass of people to be willing to be exploited. And they could not do that with having a king anymore. So they came up with this liberal thing, which was like, we will tell you have certain rights in the political sphere and give you absolutely no rights in the economic sphere whatsoever. You can't vote on what the surplus value is used for. You can't vote on what your company makes. You can't vote on what it gives charity to. You can't vote on who the company owner is. There's absolutely no economic rights at all, but there's a perception of political rights. And the point of that is stability, which is what he's talking about, is if you have like the American businessman took a close look at Nazi fascism and concluded it was too unstable. Even if it made a lot of money, it was not stable enough be worth the squeeze sort of liberalism is the answer to that. So it just begs the question, like, why is it, if that's good for all the capitalists, stable liberalism, then why does it seem like it's headed out the door?
Well, I think it's no longer stable enough. But I think there's a lot of liberal nationalists who will, like mainstream Democrats and mainstream media figures and mainstream liberals and certain elites and many NGOs are continuing to try to advance liberal nationalism. They just are they don't understand that it's losing now.
Yeah, or that it's, I think not even that it's people are turning against it, but that it's untenable as the perfect encapsulation of this is the genocide of Gaza. Is the base economics requires a genocide in this case because the U.S. empire requires a proxy state in Israel, and that where before there was very little threat to the United States as the global hegemon, now there is a huge threat coming from China to mostly and Russia to a lesser extent. So Israel is hosting Xi Jinping and Netanyahu saying that their two countries are the best of friends, and that's a warning to the United States that they're not the only game in town. So I think people are perplexed on why Biden didn't do what someone perceivably far to the right of him, Reagan did, just say knock it off. And the reason is that Reagan didn't have to contend with Israel having an alternative to be a proxy of someone else. So the empire requires a genocide because the domestic politics in Israel suddenly matter more than domestic politics in the sort of center of the empire. And that's why the anti-Semitism charge is so important. It's not simply a bully thing. It's like the fig leaf of, this is liberalism. This is not fascism we're doing in Israel. It's liberalism because we're protecting an oppressed class. They need that fig leaf, but most people see through it now. That's the problem, is that most people can see as we hurtle through this crisis, which is economic primarily and political secondarily, more and more people will see that liberalism is a hypocrisy because it's not meant, there's no commitment to the actual ideals itself. There's only a commitment to it as a means to an end, which is making the U.S. capitalist empire stable.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what if you were to examine what the principles of an American liberal nationalist are, if you'd be able to identify them, except for to identify that through many historical events and eras, they chose stability of the system and of the union over other things. I don't know that I don't think it's got as many values and principles as folks would like it to have. I think it's much more amorphous, at least the liberal nationalism as he describes. But yes, I think that the genocide and the standing by while a genocide unfolds on social media has destroyed liberalism, not just liberal nationalism, but all the liberal institutions that exist to supposedly manage genocide and conflict and do all this genocide prevention work and all of that. It's gone. Yeah. There are no liberal institutions that govern war and foreign affairs are gone. They've been completely gutted by this. And I think everyone knows that.
Yeah, that's what this guy gets dragged out of the press conference at the end of the Biden administration says, was it worth sacrificing the rules-based order? And that's what he's talking about is most people suspected that none of you folks cared about any of this, but your willingness to pretend meant that other people had guardrails. But now that it's an open hypocrisy, why would I take a hit in my own country politically for a rule that you tell me is so important? I mean,
yeah. And I don't know how much those rules ever were really followed by the hegemonic powers and the major players the United States, but there's a huge amount of money in industry and negotiating and navigating, and there's a lot of stuff behind those rules. They were creating enough boundaries and guardrails and expectations and mores and taboos that it was at least partially governing international affairs and order. And now there's absolutely nothing. I mean, there's no rules about. I mean, Israel is how many different countries has Israel bombed and targeted? And 8.
Yeah.
Like the expectations, any sort of
They just bombed Qatar, which is like,
yeah. So
I mean, it's
completely broken down.
Yeah.
And for a while there was there's like a slight willingness to at least nod to those rules. Oh, we didn't mean to hit the hospital. Oh, we're hitting the hospital because, and now there's not even that. And it's been it's only been 22 months. And all of if you're like a legal scholar of international law, your entire field has been destroyed. There's nothing left.
Yeah. I was just going to say, thinking of things that the United States has done in the past, like Iran-Contra, for example. They had at least the decency to pretend to be, oh, this is bad and people should be punished for it, like,
or to hide it for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And now
the
next conflict,
official state of the United States was, we're going to give you the weapons to do this, and it's a good thing that we're doing that.
Yeah. So what does the next major conflict look like? So
whatever it will be, it'll involve robot dogs. So
Chinese robot dogs.
Well, they have robot wolves, and we have robot dogs. So I think they're ahead of this arms race.
Our robot dogs are not military robot dogs, aren't they? Aren't they like? Don't they do like tasks?
So, well, you're talking about
The
Boston
robot dogs.
Yeah, so they're already developing police models, but if you don't think there's military models, you're crazy.
Can you imagine explaining robot dogs to Trump?
He probably would prefer it to a real dog. It doesn't shed.
Pets.
It doesn't pee anywhere.
Has Trump ever had a pet?
It probably does whatever. That's a good question. This is the first time a president hasn't had a dog in a really long time. I mean, Melania doesn't even live at the White House.
She went to visit the prince and princess with him.
I hope they have a good time.
Does Trump... No, he doesn't have a dog. Has Trump ever had a pet? Probably not.
I might just because he's a New Yorker.
And 2019 at a rally, he said he doesn't have the time to look after a pet.
He's too busy watching Fox News.
Golfing. Okay. So
does Mar-a-Lago allow you to bring pets on the premises? Probably not.
They probably shoot him. So anyways, am I sharing any more of this?
Yeah, you want to? No, go ahead and play it.
I think they reveal something more important than their individual politics. I think they reveal the project that has always united the American establishment across ideological divides. Liberal nationalists. My term. Let's talk about it. Hey folks, I'm Tad Stoermer, an American scholar of resistance history at the University of Southern Denmark and the author of Resistance History of the United States. I've been working through this concept for my book. I'm finishing up a chapter on violence in resistance right now. I'm trying to understand how resistance movements in American history keep getting interrupted, how so many resistance moments don't turn into resistance movements, resulting in structural, meaningful change. They get co-opted, they get defagged. And the answer keeps coming back to this peculiarly American mythology of exceptionalism. The idea that there is such a thing as the American project, the American experiment, the ever-perfecting, more perfect union. There isn't. Right? That's a construct. It was invented by the Patriots to justify their rebellion, then turbocharged in the 1830s to hold together a union that was coming apart under slavery. It serves the same function today. It has always served. It paints opposition as un-American, and it protects the establishment. You might think that's good. You might think stability matters more than justice. You do you. But understand what you choose. The statement about Kirk from the center left are the modern versions of what bound establishment forces together in the First Republic. Yes, slavery is evil, but holding the Union together matters more. Now, the Federalists pioneered that argument pushing for the Constitution. But those terms, union and slavery, are not parallel. One exists in a moral context, the other exists in mythology. So you have to make union outweigh the oppression of a fifth of the population. You have to invest it with some quasi-religious significance. You have to make it sacred. The American experiment, the last best hope, the city on a hill, cue sentimental violins. Plenty of people at the time saw through this. They understood that no abstract union was worth perpetual bondage that flew in the face of the language that established that union. But liberal nationalism won, as it always has in American history, by making compromise seem noble, making injustice seem temporary, making patience seem virtuous, until violence became necessary to reform that union at a catastrophic cost, a cost made higher every day by year after year and decade after decade of patience and compromise, which was really just disguised surrender. That's what I keep finding in my research. This isn't an ideological point. This is about historical facts and analysis. There are nationalists on the right and left who share far more than they differ. I'm not saying nationalism is inherently a bad thing. You come at that with your own values, but this is how nationalism functions within American political culture and to a certain extent within many political cultures. And it's all about these presumptions about America, what it should do, who it's for, and what it could be, are fundamentally the same with right and left nationalists. They're both celebrators and exceptionalists who revere the founders, who excuse, let me know if this is familiar, brutalizers and racists as visionaries, whose real message speaks somehow heroically to our moment, to which we can relate.
So this I think is, I really like this idea of like disguised surrender. I think is right, except for it's sort of like there's this scene in Get Out, which I think is the perfect encapsulation of American politics. When he's ready to leave, finally, he's understood that the family, besides the girl he's dating, the family is there to do something horrible to him. And she's looking in her bag for her keys, and she can't find it. And then finally, she pulls them out. She's been fake looking the whole time. So it's not so much as disguised surrender as it's disguised, like we would have done more, but we just couldn't figure out how to do it bullshit. Like you didn't actually want to find the keys. And I think that's the perfect encapsulation of U.S. politics, is the liberal, progressive, mainstream capitalists are always pretending to look for the keys, but they're more than happy to let slavery go on as long as it needs to, until it couldn't. Like it got pushed to war mostly because the economic requirements of the North superseded the need for stability. So, but they were perfectly fine with it up to that point.
It might be a semantic thing, but I don't hear him disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
What I hear him saying is that the most primary thing is stability and the union and this project, and therefore finding the keys is just not important enough.
Yeah. I mean, I think it sort of paints a picture of like an opposition, which is sort of like bamboozled by the idea of process as king, that they would like justice, but they sort of get in their own way. And I don't know if I exactly agree with that. But the thing I
don't agree with that, but I'm not hearing that either.
The thing I disagree with is mostly the last thing he said, which is that the left and right nationalists have this shared vision. I think that was true until, and I think that there's been a movement to make that not true by the right is tricky because, like, is Dick Cheney on the right?
Well,
is Liz Cheney on the right?
By the MAGA right.
By the MAGA right, which is to say, like, a certain set of domestic capitalists who have been less important than like the international capitalists for a century, since the New Deal.
Yeah.
And if not before that, who are, like I said, I think those folks are still invested in liberalism for now, as the best way. Yeah, as the best way to resolve the problems of both domestically and empire management. But this other group, I think, is completely done with that. I don't think they see it as useful at all.
Not interested in liberalism, and Elon Musk is not interested in liberalism, and
they'd be perfectly happy. For instance, like they don't need to co-opt Black Lives Matter. I think they'd be perfectly happy, like throwing most of those people in jail.
They believe in a American nationalism that is explicitly illiberal,
right?
And I think that what's shifted is that group is in power on the right, and that previously liberalism, like Reagan, Bush, neoliberalism, the Clinton era, that was all agreed upon by the left and the right as like, this is how we run the system.
Yeah.
I'm going to play some more.
Yeah, go ahead.
What they're doing with Charlie Kirk. Whether you agree with it or not, whether you think it's a good thing or not, it's the same process. So set aside the reality of his words and actions, assign him some abstract identity, practicing politics the right way, that immediately rehabilitates and elevates him. It's the same mental process that turns enslavers into champions of freedom, that transforms Indian killers into builders of democracy. Liberal nationalism has consistently stood in the way of meaningful structural change in American history, not because it explicitly opposes change, but because it insists that change must happen within the permitted framework of their American exceptionalism.
The word explicitly is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
Well, what this reminds me of is the argument, I don't even know who makes it. It's a Marxist argument about what counter-revolutionaries do in a liberal system.
Yeah.
That it's, if you have people who are saying, hey, slow down, let's work within the system. Why don't we put some, I don't know, childcare vouchers and here and there, like these sort of these reforms, and these people that insist on you have to go through this process, you have to respect this project, this system, this bureaucracy. We can make small changes. That all those folks are actually doing is stalling progress and insisting on the American project. And they might, if you pushed them, they might describe what they think justice is. They might have somewhat progressive notions about taking care of one another. But what they are actually doing is slowing down the work that actually makes the structural changes to get the thing they're claiming they care about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a mix of people who actually do care about it or don't care about it.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of immaterial whether they are deluded or whether they're of bad faith. I guess it's not.
Yeah, but this is like a pretty classic counter-revolution. This is what counter-revolutionary liberalism is.
Yeah, I think people should. It should be impressed upon people how important liberalism is to counter-revolution. Like that's the important part. This is like liberalism. This is the reason and function of liberalism. Not to slowly make things better, but to get things to not get better as much as possible.
And if you look at it historically, that's what liberalism arose as a counter to communism.
Mm-hmm.
This guy looks at American history, so he's looking at when things were very unstable in the 1800s, during which there was actually leftist organizing and non-capitalist options. But then post-World War, all of these international liberal ideas, what we just talked about, getting destroyed by the genocide in Gaza, the international courts, and all the rules that were made post-World War were a liberal response to an unstable world, and the dealing with the Soviet Union.
Mm.
So it's always been a counter. It's always been a deliberate, explicit counterbalance to communism.
Yeah. So yeah, they integrated the military just overnight. After all these problems, you couldn't possibly get away with it. Overnight, they did it because the Soviet Union was winning hearts and minds on the basis of the United States says their freedom and justice. They have a fucking segregated military.
Is that liberalism?
That's liberalism.
Is that opportunism?
Liberalism is telling you, one, you can't possibly integrate a military.
Oh yeah, it's too complicated. It's going to take time.
And then the moment the more stable thing is to do it, then they do it. And then they say that we can't have economic justice because we need things like an integrated military that we've delivered as liberals.
So in that, this is another argument that liberalism, especially liberal nationalism in the United States, doesn't actually have principles or values. It is just, it exists. The form it takes, which has shifted and can shift left and shift right, is just to maintain a certain bureaucratic stability of the republic. It's not driven. That's what the one thing I really don't like about this video is he talks about how liberal nationalism always picks the project over justice. And I'm like, introducing the justice framework, it's almost like, I don't think a liberal, there is no moral or ethical or philosophical framework that's driving the liberal nationalism he describes. So justice, not selecting justice isn't what they're doing. Like, justice isn't even an understandable concept.
Yeah. So one thing I think is important about the Charlie Kirk thing in general and about this discussion is the dialectic of form versus content, which is something that radicals and liberals actually, I think, fundamentally see the world differently in this respect, of which you put primary. So I don't think Ezra Klein writes this article if Charlie Kirk is explicitly openly a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Like, he wore the hood. You know, there's not writing this about David Duke.
You never know who's wearing the hood. That's why they use the hood.
I mean, I don't know. You know, David Duke's a member of the KKK. And I think if David Duke is speaking and gets shot by somebody, well, God, I don't even know.
Right.
I don't even know. These days, I have some confidence that, like,
I mean, it's different than it was 30, 40,
It
50
is.
years ago.
But anyway, I'll say my point. Maybe it's not as true as I wish it was. But I think the fact that Kirk, regardless of what he was talking about, he presented himself in a way that's recognizable to the establishment. Like, this debate.
White and he wore a suit.
That's a big part of it. The way he presented himself, but also, like, I'm a debate guy, right? It doesn't matter what my opinions are. What matters is the process I'm going through I'm not organizing a militia. I'm not, I don't know, buying guns or something. He's debate. It's just a conversation. And it doesn't matter what the content is. And this, I think, is a big principle of liberalism, is that the process, it doesn't matter what the outcome of the process is. The process, the form, is what's paramount. What shit is being processed by that form is secondary to that. Whereas a radical is like people will say during the days when the woke the rad libs were canceling people at colleges, for example, said, would you be okay if they canceled a Marxist professor? And I say, no, because who you're canceling matters. It's not the fact that they're being canceled. What are they being canceled for? That's what matters. What are they advocating for? What do they want the outcome to be? And I think that's the thing with liberals, is like, canceling is the crime. It doesn't matter why.
So I think there are maybe some, I mean, we should ask Tad Stoermer, but there's probably some tenets of the American project that are, like, primary. Like, maybe it's freedom of speech, freedom of expression, like freedom of the press. Maybe it is some of those ideas. And so they do principally defend those.
Yeah, it's like,
it's still very amorphous. They shift quite a bit.
Yeah, apparently, like, there's these stories of contrasting Trump and Obama, that Obama would go to these, oil kingdoms in the Middle East and get all kinds of bribes. They go to their hotel room, there'd be, like, all kinds of nice shit in the hotel room, and he'd make everyone give it back, as if the United States isn't a bribe, like, as if the United States doesn't do whatever the United States monetarily wants to do. But the form of bribery, is the problem. Like,
Well, but this whole thing identifies the hypocrisy. So Ezra Klein is concerned about freedom of speech when Charlie Kirk gets shot. So much so that he's going to write a column immediately defending, basically putting himself as an ally of Kirk's. I mean, it's like he's falling all over himself 24 hours after Kirk is dead.
Yeah. Don't be mad at me.
Ezra Klein says what about students at Columbia?
Yeah, absolutely nothing.
So these are not liberals who are consistently advocating for certain principles, or it's I mean, he's a mainstream media pundit, so maybe he knows what he has to say. But what is left of the liberal project if all they can do is defend Charlie Kirk?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing is So he doesn't write this article about the Minnesota people who got shot. And the reason for that is he doesn't see it as his job to lecture the right about upholding these values. He sees his job is to lecture progressives about upholding these values. He's telling basically everyone who got on the internet and said, why do I give a shit that Charlie Kirk is dead? He's a piece of shit. He's lecturing them. You should not have that attitude. And he's doing that for two reasons. One is
for our union.
That bingo. That's number one, is that you are, don't not be deluded that that you should celebrate political violence, because even though that's how we freed the slaves and that's how we broke free of the King of England, regardless of what the outcome is, that is a bad thing to do, and we should never engage in it or celebrate it. That's one. And two is, he's terrified of getting in trouble. Like, I think they are, the liberal pundit class doesn't want to be blamed for this, and they care a lot more about that than random Minnesota politicians who don't know their name, or
a university system that has any academic freedom, which has basically been entirely eliminated in the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
That is collateral damage. They're willing to abandon that. Yeah. They'll move on to what?
They're very dedicated in cooling off the culture war. Unlike the MAGA people, and I think that's
by losing it.
They want to
compromise.
They want to cool people off. They don't want. So Mao says to be attacked by the enemy is a good thing. And it's because Mao fundamentally understood that in a war between parasites and the people who make all the money are going to win because they're indisposable to the parasites. Ezra Klein has the exact opposite intuition, and he's right, that in a board-clearing conflict between people like him and MAGA, he and his ilk are going to lose. So they don't want to escalate. They don't want to be attacked by the enemy, and I think he hopes that, one, he can tone things down on the progressives so they won't incite further, advances by the MAGA people, and two, he's trying to cool off MAGA. It's not us. We don't agree with this. You can, put your guns back in your holsters, because they understand that if there is a final fight, they're going to lose it. And I think that's true. I think they're right about that.
They're not going to lose it. They're going to lose it because liberalism has already lost.
It's bankrupt. Well, they're going to lose it because it's bankrupt, and that's increasingly obviously so. Is because the powers that be, structurally untenable. The powers that be don't really need it. And they're wondering constantly why they're investing so much time. You think about all the money that goes into having this liberal fig leaf on the empire. It's an expensive thing to do if it's not necessary.
Yeah, well, it employs a lot of people like Ezra Klein.
Well, yeah, but if that money can be spent on weapons instead, and one thing that should be pointed out here is that Russia and China are both showing that you can have illiberal capitalist projects that have a certain level of stability that the Nazis didn't have.
Well, Israel too. I guess it's not stable over there.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to make it's once you get to the imperial periphery, things get a little wonky. But if you're talking about the core, China went from, I think, a real communist society to a capitalist one, and since that transition has been relatively stable and not at all liberal.
True.
So there's a model for an illiberal capitalism that's relatively stable, and you have to be somewhat jealous of that if you're a U.S. capitalist.
I'm going to play a little bit more.
Good.
Then challenge the fundamental goodness of the American project. The result? Necessary changes get delayed, they get postponed, making their eventual cost catastrophic. The Civil War. The violence of the Civil Rights Movement. Each time, liberal nationalists insisted the system would reform itself, that patience in working within the system would suffice. Each time, they were wrong. Each time, the delay made the price higher. And here we are again. The nationalists on the right are mobilizing, and the nationalists on the left are enabling them, not through agreement on policy, but through agreement on the fundamental project. They share a commitment to the performance of American democracy over its substance, the mythology of American exceptionalism over the reality of American oppression. When Klein and Newsom and others claim common cause with Kirk, they're not just being civil, they're affirming overtly that his projects and theirs are variations on the same theme, and we must demand what is that theme. that American mythology has always served to deflect, delay, and defeat demands for real change? That's just the history. Prove me wrong. So the resistance...
Yeah, see, he's describing a world that no longer exists.
Well, I feel like I guess there is agreement on the myth of American exceptionalism.
That is, but is there agreement on the importance of democracy?
No.
Do you think the people around Trump give a shit about? I mean,
No.
He said he didn't know if protesters had First Amendment rights anymore when a reporter asked him about it.
I think he's describing a world that doesn't exist, where there was much more alignment between the left and the right nationalists, and they were both liberal.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's it. Yes, they were both liberal nationalists before.
Now we have liberal nationalists and something else.
Yeah,
right-wing nationalists. They both, I guess, do appeal to this myth of American exceptionalism. They just describe it differently. One wants a pluralistic liberalism, and one wants a white Christian.
Yeah, they're both appealing to that myth, but in the service of completely different things now. Yeah,
right. And I guess what's interesting is that the liberal nationalists will desperately try to... The fact that Ezra Klein will write so kindly and desperately about Charlie Kirk shows you that they're still trying to pretend that they're on the same, that they're doing something together.
Yeah.
And the right nationalists couldn't give a shit. Doesn't want anything to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
Hates them.
Mm-hmm. Will lock them all up at the earliest opportunity, which is something that people like Ezra Klein will never do. Obama is not going to prosecute Bush. Biden's not going to prosecute Trump. I guess they did prosecute Trump. Cut that. But yeah, no, they won't. They won't reciprocate. But like that, this guy has to understand that the moment it's politically convenient to do so, every single Democrat in Congress is going into a jail cell.
Yeah, I feel like this guy probably does understand it.
So they're not, but he understands they're not committed to the democratic process at all anymore.
In his caption at the end, he says, but at least see it clearly when he says, when Klein claims Kirk is a partner in the American project, he's choosing nationalism over democracy.
Huh?
So I think he's just not being clear with his words.
He's using democracy there instead of justice, which is the other concept he's using. He also sort of waffles between, are the liberals enabling this, or they actually agree on something fundamental? I think he's not exactly
I don't think he's sure about it. I don't think he's sure.
Another thing that he's doing, which is like the Civil War was not a result of like pent up socio-political tensions that like the liberals could no longer hold back. There was a movement by a section of the ruling class to abolish slavery because slavery was holding back the like development of the means of production in the country. That's also the story of the American Revolution. I wouldn't think that's true of the civil rights movement per se. So you could make an argument that was different, but
it was like resistance, radical resistance, finally pushing, I guess, liberalism. Liberals lost, I guess.
Yeah. Well, did they?
I don't know.
Yeah, in retrospect, they kind of successfully bounced back from that. But
yeah.
The point is that the Civil War was a story of the ruling class deciding that stability was less important than progress, which is not the same thing as justice.
Progress.
Right, which was to replace chattel slavery with wage slavery as the main way of profit making.
I guess we have to read this guy's book.
I don't think we do.
Resisted. Is it just the far right? Or is it the entire framework of liberal nationalism that makes the far right possible, that creates space for them to operate, that treats their anti-democratic project as a legitimate part of the American experiment? Let's get on Charlie's
That's true.
Yeah, okay.
They do that.
Yeah.
Work, folks. Because history teaches us anything, is that liberal nationalism will always choose stability over justice.
Is that what happened in Weimar Germany?
I think that in Weimar Germany, I think I would say that who you might call the liberal nationalists were so concerned about the left that they were willing to move with Hitler.
Were they choosing stability over?
I think that they were No, I think that they.
The left for them would be radical, would be not stability.
Well, it's very similar. It's very similar to our situation in that
Yeah.
stability became increasingly obviously untenable,
Yes.
and then you choose what your instability looks like.
Yeah.
And for them, it was whatever we need to do to defeat the left, we must do.
Well, and I think because they saw that as the biggest threat to stability, and I think some of their choices and notions about how to manage that enabled the far right to exist and to flourish, and then they lost to it.
Well, they did. I mean, the thing is, they didn't lose. They didn't lose to it. Is the thing. A lot of these big names like Krupp and others, they thought Hitler was a joke, and then when it became increasingly obvious that they needed him because the alternatives were worse, they switched sides to him. They made a ton of money, and they never went to jail.
So you're saying that the people behind the scene, the moneyed liberals behind the scenes, just rode through a period of right-wing extremism and came out the other side.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. That was their vehicle to survive. I mean, sort of the height of the German Revolution was in the rear view, but the whole society was in crisis. There was no stability to speak of, which is why they were so worried about the left.
They had to build. There was no stability.
There was very little buy-in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's going to happen here too. Is there's going to be there's already less and less buy-in into, like, as soon as you got to imagine the Democrats are reaching to be the party of America, spending since Carter, reaching desperately to be, we're the party of America, and the Republicans doing it. As soon as they grab it, everyone loses faith in America, and we need something else. Everyone couldn't care less about that, and all these, lots of, patriotic people.
They're nowhere close to grabbing it. They're never gonna have it.
I think they are
trying that hard.
Look at the tariff thing. Like, what is the party of anti-tariffs, free trade is now the Democrats. That was the Reagan's entire project, was neoliberalism, open up the borders. Free trade. Now, who's the party of that? They're desperate. Like, they take that as,
by the time they get there, it's over.
Yeah, they grabbed it, and the Republicans went, "You can have it. It's dead in the water. We don't care about this anymore." You can be the party of empire and the party of.
It's kind of like having an 8-year-old. By the time you tell them something is true or something is cool, they're like, whatever. By the time the parent catches up to whatever it is.
Oh, they're onto a new thing? Yeah, that's what it is. Oh, I finally figured out how do we use TikTok, and now they don't even care about it anymore.
Yeah, or some word they're saying. What were they saying? Sigma boy. And then by the time I figure out what that is, it's like they haven't said it in 6 months.
Your powers will fade.
Sigma boy.
As you grow old. You're on the make, and you don't do regret. You're always out for what you can get. You think like a snake, and you ooze like a snail. Let the trail go cold as you swallow your tail. With your low rent skills and your heart of flint, telling your tales that are unfit to print. You're all weasel words, backed up by the boots, obsessed like the rest, with a promise of loot. Your pies will fade as you grow old. 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 You demand of the sea, it obey your commands. You grab at the land with both of your hands. But candles will burn, and time will reveal all that you've done and the money you steal. The suffering you're causing gives you no pause for thought. You've got your claws in the dead summer's heart. birds will return, as the birds always do. When they come home to roost, they'll feast on you. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade